All right. Okay. Hopefully we'll get through all of this today. That's the plan I did with first hour. I want to tell you something right off the top here. There's stuff in here, and I'll try and alert you when it's something that's going to be an essay. But there's stuff in here that's on your test that you need to know that isn't necessarily on the PowerPoint. And so make sure that you're writing stuff down and you're paying attention as we go through this. So at some time after the Feast of Dedication, at some time after December, Jesus goes to Bethany and he raises Lazarus from the dead. What we're talking about, and then the triumphal entry, we can get the date on. We know that the time frame for that as well, because it's the Sunday before the Passover, before Good Friday. So what we're going to be talking about between the resurrection of Lazarus and once we get to the triumphal entry is somewhere in between there. I'm not going to go any farther than it's sometime between December and March, April, whatever it was that year, because I don't think we can really know that. But this is Jesus' last Passover. We do know that. And he is actually going to die during that Passover. And again, as I told you, there's a story of Jesus coming to Bethany 6 days before his death, and he arrives in Bethany, and at some point while he was in Bethany, Mary anointed him, and the book ignores that, but I won't. We'll talk about that. So this starts where we left off. This lesson does with Caiaphas' devilish plan. The Sadducees are going to grow more concerned. I'm going to read this and then I'm going to talk to you about the Sadducees because we haven't really talked about the Sadducees. The Sadducees grow concerned. Many of the Jews, therefore, so Jews is just a general term for the Jewish leadership. Some were Sadducees, some were Pharisees. Many of the Jews, therefore, who had come with Mary and had seen what he did, believed in him. But some of them went to the Pharisees and told what Jesus had done. So the chief priests and the Pharisees gathered the council and said, "What are we to do? For this man performs many signs. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him, and the Romans will come and take away both our place and our nation." So the concern was that Jesus was becoming more and more popular, and the people were enamored with them. And the people, there was this nationalistic fervor that had been going on for some time. And the concern is that Jesus is going to whip up this nationalistic fervor, and they're going to attempt to overthrow Rome or to revolt against Rome, and then Rome will bring the hammer down. Now, this says that the Sadducees grow concerned. I need to tell you who Sadducees are. So this is where I usually sing my song, "I Just Want to Be a Sheep," but I'm not going to sing it. I will tell you it's a funny little song that we sang in college. That was, "I just want to be a sheep, bah. I just want to be a sheep, bah. I just want to be a sheep, bah. I just want to be a sheep." It's really a tough song. And I don't want to be a Pharisee because they're not fair, you see. And then it was, "I don't want to be a Sadducee because they're so Sadducee." So I just want to be a sheep. So the Sadducees are growing concerned. And the Sadducees were like, okay, so think of the United States Capitol, and most of the people that are senators and are congressmen and women are either Republicans or they're Democrats. So kind of think of it that way. But most of the members of the Sanhedrin were actually Sadducees. It was the larger party group within the Sanhedrin. The Pharisees were the minority, but they were more influential, particularly with the people. Now, here's what you need to know about the Sadducees. They did not believe in the resurrection. Now, I'm not saying they didn't believe in Jesus' resurrection. They didn't. They were members of the Sanhedrin. But that's not what I'm saying. So remember when Mary comes out to Jesus before he raises Lazarus, and Jesus says, your brother will rise again. And she says, yes, I know on the last day he'll rise again, like everybody does. And that's not what Jesus was talking about. But she was expressing a Jewish and also actually Christian theology, that at the end of time, everyone who has ever lived will be raised bodily, physically, from the dead. And some will go to eternal heaven, and some will go to eternal death. And so this was a belief in Judaism as well. It's different in some ways from Christianity, obviously theologically, but the Sadducees did not believe that. The Pharisees did believe that. They did believe the Sadducees did not believe in any sort of resurrection. Apparently, the afterlife is just some sort of disembodied spiritual experience. But they couldn't deny the miracles of Jesus, and they knew that the people were enthralled with him, even more so after he raised Lazarus. Lazarus is walking around alive, and everybody knew he had been dead. Lazarus was living, walking, breathing proof of the miracles of Christ. And so Jesus' popularity continues to grow. This outline doesn't go with what it says. So public opinion was in Christ's favor. And because of what, as I said, because of the sort of fervor, the nationalistic fervor, the leadership was worried that there would be a revolt, and then that Rome would crush that revolt and crush the Jews. And honestly, it had happened before. We talked about Judas Maccabeus, right? Who led a successful revolt, but Barabbas had led an insurrection himself. And so it had happened before where somebody got angry with Rome and they revolted against Rome, and Rome would crack down on them. And so the leadership is trying to prevent that from happening by those who are beginning to follow Jesus. And so Caiaphas solves the problem, or so he thinks, and he unwittingly makes a prophecy. But one of them, Caiaphas, who was high priest that year, said to them, you know nothing at all, nor do you understand that it is better for you that one man should die for the people, not that the whole nation should perish. So Caiaphas had been in the office of the high priest since AD 18, so he had witnessed the entirety of Jesus' ministry from the beginning, at least that which took place in Jerusalem. And he believed he wanted to keep his job, and so he believed the best way to do that, to keep Rome off his back, was to kill Jesus. And so Caiaphas's purpose, as he said, in killing Jesus, was to prevent the Romans from coming down on them, and prevent the revolt of trying to make Jesus their king. And his reasoning was this kind of an argument that you've probably heard about. I don't know if you know exactly what it means, but his reasoning was that the end justifies the means. Have you heard that saying before? The end justifies the means. Think of it this way: the end is the final outcome. The means is the way you get to it. And so the end justifies the means means that as long as the end is this good end that I want, how I get there doesn't matter. Like, this good end makes the way I got here okay. So let's say on at late in the evening on Sunday the 21st of March, you go, oh my gosh, I've got a test tomorrow. What am I going to do? I haven't studied for it. I know, I'll cheat. And it's okay, because I didn't have time to study, and she gave us a test on a Monday anyway. I mean, what kind of teacher does that? And so you justify your way of getting there because the outcome is good. And that's what Caiaphas is doing here. He's saying, look, we don't want Rome to come down on us. We have to stop that at all costs. And this guy is the cost. There are a lot of situations in our world, and there are a lot of situations in the Bible that are logical, but they're wrong. And other things that are illogical, but they're right. And now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I'm just going to give you a few examples. But also, I want to make sure you understand that all of this was all part of God's plan. He's working out his plan of salvation, regardless of what they do, regardless of how they try to stop it. So here are some examples. I'm going to skip over some, and I'm going to talk about some others. So the philosophy that the end justifies the means is kind of Caiaphas' philosophy. So these things in the Bible were logical but wrong. Cain offered to prove the ground. Abraham had a child with his slave woman. It was his wife's idea. That was crazy. And then let's talk about Lot. So Lot was Abraham's nephew, and they had lived in the same herding family, kind of nomadic family. And Abraham owned everything, but he just let his nephew Lot, like you let your 30-year-old kid live in your basement. So he just let his nephew Lot kind of live off of him. And eventually, Lot's servants and Abraham's servants began arguing with one another. And so Abraham goes to Lot and says, look, let's not be arguing with each other because we're brothers. So I own all of it. And if you want to take the land over there, I'll go over here. And if you want the land over here, I'll go over there. Just pick, and I'll take whatever you don't pick. And so Lot looks over here and he goes, oh, lots of things can grow. They're good for farming, for herding our animals. That's great. Yeah, I'm going to take this. And that was logical. That was what was best for his nomadic existence. Do I know what else was over there? Sodom and Gomorrah. Yeah, Sodom and Gomorrah were over there. Didn't work out real well for Lot, right? It was logical, but it was wrong. Or what about David? David decided, that's a big army over there. I think I need to see how many men I have. Make sure I can fight this battle. I forgot about Goliath. Maybe logical to figure out what your strength is, but it was wrong. The battle was the Lord's. And David wanted to fight it on his own strength. And then, no, not this one. Oh, no, okay. Yeah, we'll just skip this. But there's some things in the Bible that are illogical. They don't make sense, but they're right. Noah built an ark in the middle of a field somewhere in Ur, and I think it was Ur, and there's no water anywhere. And he told everybody it's going to rain so much that there's going to be a flood. Now, floods they understood, but there'd never been rain before. So, it's going to rain? What's rain? It's water falling from the sky. Water doesn't fall from the sky. And they thought he was crazy. Until it started to rain a lot. They were trying to swim. Abraham offered his only son. What kind of sense does that make? It's illogical, but it was right. Gideon. I love the story of Gideon. Gideon was going to attack the Midianites. God told him to attack the Midianites, and then God came to him and said, yeah, but there's a problem. You have too many men. Now, the Midianite army was the superpower of the day. So Gideon's like, I have too many men? I thought I didn't have enough men. And so the first thing God said is, let all the ones that don't want to fight go home. So Gideon said, if you're scared, go home. And a bunch of them went home. I think half of them went home. And then he said, take them down to the river. And I can't remember if it's the ones that put the water in their hands go home, or the ones that lap up the water like a dog go home. But whichever it was, they were to go home. The hands went home. Yeah. So the hands go home, and everybody else stays. And then there was a third one. What was the third one? I can't remember now. But he whittled his army down to 300 men defeat a huge, powerful Midianite army. It'd be like if Coach Dozer came up to you guys and said, okay, so our opponent tonight is Bellevue West, so let's go. Oh, and the starters can't play. Right? So, but that's, and I'm sure that was the noise that came out of Gideon's mouth, right? So, you know how they beat them? With some torches and some pots, and they just made a lot of noise and looked like they were really big. And the Midianites were awakened in the middle of the night to an invading army. And they all grabbed their swords, and it was dark, so they just started, slashing, and they killed each other. And Gideon won. Doesn't make any sense. It's illogical, but it is right. So Caiaphas' pronouncement that one man should die so that all of them could live seemed logical, but it was wrong. Sort of. At the same time, God used Caiaphas' logic to accomplish his plan. There's a paradox here, right? Did Jesus die for the people? Absolutely, he did. He intentionally and willingly died, not just for Israel, but for the whole world. So Caiaphas makes an unwitting prophecy. He did not say this of his own accord, but being high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus would die for the nation, and not for the nation only, but also to gather into one the children of God who are scattered abroad. So from that day on, they made plans to put him to death. What John is saying, he is hinting at that Jesus didn't just die for the Jews. He died for the world, for God so loved the world. And he died for the Gentiles as well. And so Caiaphas had no idea how true his statement was. Now, at some point, Jesus is going to retreat from public view for a while. We don't know exactly how long. But and we don't know even exactly what he was doing, but he was possibly teaching his disciples. He really tried to get his disciples to understand what was going to happen. They did not get it. You'll see Peter in a couple of chapters really still not get it. This is the night before Jesus died, and he still didn't get it. They didn't really get it until after the resurrection. But at some point, he travels to Ephraim. I'm going to read this to you. So from that day on, they made plans to put Jesus to death. Jesus, therefore, no longer walked openly among the Jews. Not that he was afraid, but he knew it wasn't his time yet. But went from there to the region near the wilderness, to a town called Ephraim. And there he stayed with the disciples. Now the Passover of the Jews was at hand, and many went up from the country to Jerusalem before the Passover to purify themselves. They were looking for Jesus and saying to one another as they stood in the temple, "What do you think? That he will not come to the feast at all?" Now the chief priests and the Pharisees had given orders that if anyone knew where he was, he should let them know so that they might arrest him. So Ephraim was north about 20 miles, I think, from Jerusalem, and that's where he was. So what was it then? Why did he retreat? I think he wanted time alone with his disciples. And then we get to John 12:1, and it says, 6 days before the Passover, Jesus therefore came to Bethany, where Lazarus was, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. So it would have been interesting, I think, for Jesus, knowing what's about to happen, watching people stream past him toward Jerusalem, knowing what would happen there. But why did he do that? What was he doing? We don't know everything he was doing, but we do know one reason why he took the direction he did to Ephraim and then to Jericho and then to Jerusalem. There's a blind man named Bartimaeus who needed his sight back, and Jesus needed to heal him. Then there was this little guy named Zacchaeus that needed to learn about Jesus. So Jesus, before he went to the cross in Jerusalem, took time heaven with both of them to heal them both, one physically and spiritually, and the other unspiritually. Jesus was proving, and always did, that he was willing to go to great lengths to save people. He still does. He still will. So now we have the people's interest in Jesus. When the large crowd of the Jews learned that Jesus was there, they came out not only on account of him, but also to see Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. So the chief priests made plans to put Lazarus to death as well, because on account of Lazarus, many of the Jews were going away and believing in Jesus. So 6 days before Passover, Jesus arrives in Bethany. And he probably stayed at the house of Lazarus and Martha and Mary. We don't know that for sure. But word soon spread that he was there. And many people came out to Bethany, it's close to Jerusalem, to see him. And they wanted not only to see Jesus, but they wanted to see Lazarus, because Lazarus, is this guy really alive? And they made plans to kill Lazarus too, because he was causing people to believe. So now we come to this royal entry, this triumphant entry into Jerusalem. The next day, the large crowd that had come to the feast heard that Jesus was coming to Jerusalem. So they took branches of palm trees and went out to meet him and cried, "Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, even the King of Israel." And Jesus found a young donkey and sat on it, just as it was written, "Fear not, daughter of Zion. Behold, your king is coming, sitting on a donkey's colt." So we have this, they're calling it the 7 steps of his entry. I don't know what they mean by that, but this is what's happening in these verses. Jesus walked first from Bethany to Bethany. I forgot to read this. His disciples did not understand these things at first, but when Jesus was glorified, then they remembered that these things had been written about him and had been done to him. The crowd that had been with him when he called Lazarus out of the tomb and raised him from the dead continued to bear witness. So he walked from Bethany to Bethany. So here you see the temple up here, and this is the Mount of Olives. This is Bethany, which is on the other side of the Mount of Olives, and this is Bethany, which is about a mile from the temple. It's farther up on the eastern slope of, I think it would be, of the Mount of Olives. And it was in Bethany where he found a colt, a donkey to ride on. He sent his disciples to get that. And the disciples get the donkey, and Jesus rode on it down the Mount of Olives on the other side. And the people are shouting praises, "Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." Hosanna means, "Oh, save." They're asking him to save them from the Romans. I don't think they understand that he came to save them from a power that is much greater than the Romans. But the people were overjoyed. The disciples were overjoyed. Look, he's finally getting the attention he deserves. He's finally getting, treated the way he deserves. He's being hailed as a king. And they're hoping that this king will overthrow their Roman oppressors. They have no idea that he's actually riding to his own death. And at some point during this scene, he becomes overwhelmed with grief, probably for those who would be lost. And he weeps. And then a weird thing happens. He gets to Jerusalem, he gets off the donkey, he walks in the temple, he looks around a little bit, and he leaves. He goes back to Bethany. What's going on there? He's fulfilling prophecy that the Lord will come to his temple. And so that is a fulfillment of prophecy. Now let's talk a little bit about this donkey. And isn't he cute? He's kind of cute. They're really stubborn, of course, but cute. So some people are like, donkey? Really? A donkey? I mean, that's not way.
When lecture seniors were like 8th graders, I could not say the word donkey or what was shrugged over. It would cause them just to go into.
Like right now, if those seniors, they're now freshmen in college, were in this room and I said donkey, they'd be like, donkey, you know. Anyway, I digress. Why a donkey? Why not a horse? Doesn't a horse make more sense? No, for several reasons. The first reason is, well, first of all, I'll read to you about what God commanded of kings in the Old Testament in Deuteronomy. When you come to the land, and the Lord your God, this is God talking to Moses, the Lord your God is giving you, and you possess it and dwell in it, and then say, I will set a king over me, like all the nations that are around me. You may indeed set a king over you, whom the Lord your God will choose. One from among your brothers you shall set as king over you. You may not put a foreigner over you, who is not your brother. Only he must not acquire many horses for himself, or cause the people to return to Egypt in order to acquire many horses, since the Lord has said to you, you shall never return that way again. And he shall not acquire many wives for himself, lest his heart turn away, nor shall he acquire for himself excessive silver and gold. By and large, Solomon and David obeyed that. Not Solomon, Saul and David obeyed that. Solomon and the rest of them, not so much. Many horses and wives and all the gold and all that stuff they weren't supposed to do. But here's the thing: a donkey was a symbol of humility and dependence on the Lord. That's why God said, "Don't ride horses, ride donkeys," because it was a more humble symbol. So kings were associated with donkeys. It was a symbol of kingship. So here is Jesus riding this donkey in humility and as a sign of his kingship. And he is also fulfilling prophecy. We read the prophecy from Zechariah 9:9. Your king will come humble and riding on a donkey. Now we have just a very little bit left, so stay with me because this last part, you want to write this down. No, it's not in your notes, but this is going to be an essay on your test, so you want to write this down. Rejoice. This is the Zechariah 9. Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout aloud, O daughter of Jerusalem. Behold, your king is coming to you, righteous and having salvation is he, humble and mounted on a donkey, on a foal, the coal of a donkey. So here's the thing, and these are the two truths that you need to understand about Christ's crucifixion, about all of this. The reason why the crowd went to meet him was that they heard that he had done this sign. And so the Pharisees said to one another, you see that you are gaining nothing. Look, the whole world has gone after him. Here, this is Sunday, right? And on Sunday, they're hailing him as king. And they're worshiping him. But by Friday, they're saying, crucify him, give us Barabbas. And here are the two things that you need to understand about this triumphal entry and that you're going to need to write about this triumphal. This entire passage shows us two things: the sovereignty of God. God is in control of what's happening here. And not just what's happening here, but what's happening after that as well. It was God's plan from the beginning, from before the beginning of time. And Jesus knew. Jesus says, nobody takes my life from me. I willingly lay it down. So we see the sovereignty of God as they hail him as king, and he is in fact king. They don't realize what that all means, but he is king. And then secondly, we see the fickleness of humankind. that this same group of people who are hailing him as king on on Sunday will on Friday call for his crucifixion. God didn't plan for Christ to be made king at that point, king in the sense of what he will be revealed as someday. The people were ready, they thought they were ready for a king, but they weren't. And as soon as they found out that this isn't the king we wanted, they turn on him. God is working in this entire story, in this entire gospel, to fulfill the plan that he made from before the beginning of time. At the same time, the people are fickle, they are changeable. They're enthralled with Jesus one day, and they are feeling crucified him a few days later. We do that sometimes too. We're on a mission trip, or there's a great worship service or a great sermon, and we're on fire for God. And once we leave that mountaintop experience, not so enamored by it. We are as humans fickle. Fortunately, God is faithful, even when we are. That is what? That's the time. That's the end of the lecture. And have a good weekend. And we'll pick up with some stuff on John 12 on Monday.